Dr. Phil leaned forward in his chair, his voice cutting through the studio like a blade. "Stop the tape." The cameras kept rolling, but every producer in the control booth froze. The audience, 200 people packed into the studio, fell silent. On stage, sitting across from him, was a woman whose tears had just told a story that no script could have predicted. Her name was Sarah Mitchell, and she had come to confront the person who betrayed her trust in the most devastating way possible. But what happened next, when Dr. Phil turned to his production team and said, "Bring her backstage," would change everything. Not just for Sarah. Not just for the cameras. But for everyone watching. This is the story of the moment Dr. Phil broke his own rules. And what it revealed about forgiveness, pain, and the human capacity to heal. 3 weeks earlier, Sarah had been living what most would call a normal life. She was a 34-year-old elementary school teacher in suburban Ohio, married for 8 years, mother to a 6-year-old daughter named Emma. Her days were predictable: morning routines, packed lunches, parent-teacher conferences, bedtime stories. She had a best friend named Claire whom she'd known since college. Claire was Emma's godmother. Claire was the person Sarah called when she needed to laugh, to cry, to vent about the small frustrations of life. But 3 weeks ago, Sarah's husband, Michael, sat her down at their kitchen table and confessed something that shattered her world. He had been having an affair. For 6 months. With Claire. The betrayal wasn't just infidelity. It was a double fracture, her marriage and her closest friendship, both destroyed in a single revelation. Sarah didn't scream. She didn't throw anything. She sat there, staring at the man she'd built a life with, and felt her entire sense of reality crumble. That night, Michael moved out. Claire stopped answering her phone. And Sarah was left alone with a 6-year-old who kept asking, "Where's Daddy? Why doesn't Aunt Claire visit anymore?" But what Sarah didn't know, what no one knew, was that the betrayal went even deeper than she could have imagined. A friend who worked in television production had reached out to Dr. Phil's team, explaining Sarah's situation. Within days, Sarah received a call. The show wanted her to come on. They wanted to bring Claire on too, to facilitate a conversation. Sarah hesitated. She didn't want spectacle. She didn't want her pain turned into entertainment. But Dr. Phil's team promised something different. This isn't about drama. It's about giving you a space to be heard. So Sarah flew to Los Angeles. She sat in the green room, hands trembling, as a producer explained the format. Claire would be brought out. They would sit across from each other. Dr. Phil would mediate. Sarah asked one question. Will she tell me why? The producer couldn't promise that. No one could. When the cameras started rolling, Dr. Phil introduced Sarah to the audience. He explained the situation in his trademark direct style. No sugarcoating, no theatrics. Just the facts. Sarah's husband had an affair with her best friend. And now, Sarah is here because she wants answers. The audience murmured. Some faces showed pity. Others anger. Then Claire walked out. The studio went completely silent. Claire looked smaller than Sarah remembered, her shoulders hunched, her eyes red and swollen. She sat down in the chair across from Sarah and couldn't look at her. Dr. Phil didn't waste time. Claire, why are you here? Claire's voice was barely a whisper. Because I owe her the truth. For the next 20 minutes, Claire talked. She talked about feeling invisible in her own life, about envying Sarah's marriage, about the twisted logic that led her to justify the affair. She cried. She apologized. But Sarah sat frozen, her face unreadable. Dr. Phil watched her carefully, his trained eye noticing the micro-expressions. The clench of her jaw, the way her hands gripped the armrests. And then Claire said something that changed everything. There's something else you need to know. Sarah's head snapped up. Dr. Phil leaned forward. The cameras zoomed in. Claire took a shaking breath. I didn't just have an affair with Michael. She choked on the words. I told him to leave you. I told him Emma would be better off without you in the picture. I wanted your life, Sarah. I wanted to replace you. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. The studio erupted. Gasps. Murmurs. One woman in the audience stood up, hands over her mouth. Dr. Phil held up a hand, and the noise stopped. He turned to Sarah, whose face had gone pale. "Sarah, did you know this?" She shook her head slowly, tears streaming down her face. "No. I thought it was just the affair. I didn't know she tried to." Her voice broke. Dr. Phil stood up. He walked over to the edge of the stage, hands in his pockets, and stared at the floor for a long moment. Then he turned to the control booth. "Stop the tape." The cameras kept rolling, but the tone shifted. Everyone knew something unscripted was happening. Dr. Phil looked at Claire. "You don't get to unload your guilt and walk away feeling better. That's not how this works." His voice was calm, but there was steel in it. "Sarah came here for answers, and you just dropped a bomb on her. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to sit there, and you're going to listen to what she has to say. And if she wants to walk out of here without forgiving you, that's her right." He turned to Sarah. "And you," his voice softened, "you don't owe her anything. Not forgiveness. Not understanding. Nothing. But I want you to have the space to decide what you need." Dr. Phil made a choice no producer expected. He told the cameras to keep rolling, but he addressed the audience directly. "We're about to step off script here. What you're about to see isn't planned. It's real." Sarah stood up. She walked slowly toward Claire, who shrank back in her chair. The audience held its breath. And then Sarah did something no one saw coming. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope. It was crumpled, worn, like it had been carried around for days. She held it out to Claire. "Open it." Claire's hands shook as she took the envelope. She pulled out a single piece of paper. It was a handwritten letter. Claire's eyes scanned the words, and her face crumpled. She looked up at Sarah, confusion and pain written all over her features. "I don't understand." Sarah's voice was steady now, stronger than it had been all day. "That's a letter I wrote to you 2 weeks ago. I wrote it at 3 in the morning when I couldn't sleep, when I was so angry I wanted to scream. I wrote down everything I wanted to say to you. Every curse, every accusation, every question. And then I read it, and I realized something." She paused, her eyes filling with tears again. "Holding on to that anger was killing me. It was turning me into someone I didn't recognize. So I wrote a second letter." Claire unfolded the second page, and as she read, tears began to fall. The letter was shorter. It said, "I forgive you. Not because you deserve it. Not because what you did is okay. But because I deserve peace. And I can't have peace if I'm chained to this hatred." Dr. Phil, standing off to the side, watched in silence. His eyes glistened. This wasn't in any script. This wasn't rehearsed. This was raw, human, and real. Sarah looked at Claire. "I'm not asking you to be my friend again. I'm not asking you to be in my life. I'm just telling you that I'm letting go. For me. For Emma. Because she deserves a mother who isn't drowning in bitterness." Claire sobbed, clutching the letters to her chest. "I don't deserve this." Sarah's voice was quiet but firm. "No, you don't. But I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for me." The audience rose to their feet. Applause thundered through the studio, but it wasn't celebratory, it was reverent. Dr. Phil stepped forward, placing a hand on Sarah's shoulder. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, a silent acknowledgement of the courage it takes to forgive when every fiber of your being wants to hold on to the pain. Then he turned to the cameras. This is what real strength looks like. It's not about revenge. It's not about making someone pay. It's about deciding that your peace matters more than their punishment." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small card. He handed it to Sarah. "This is the number for a trauma-informed therapist I work with. You call her. You take care of yourself. Because what you just did, that's the beginning, not the end." Sarah took the card, nodding. Dr. Phil looked at Claire. And you? You have work to do. Real work. Not just feeling sorry for yourself, but figuring out why you did what you did, and making sure you never do it again. But what happened next is something no one in the room, or watching at home, saw coming. As the cameras prepared to cut to commercial, Dr. Phil did something unusual. He asked the production team to pause again. He turned to Sarah. There's something I want you to know. Off camera, before the show, Claire's therapist reached out to us. She wanted me to tell you something. He glanced at Claire, who looked confused. Claire has been in therapy for the past 2 weeks, and she's been diagnosed with something called borderline personality disorder. It doesn't excuse what she did, but it explains some of the patterns, the impulsivity, the fear of abandonment, the way she sabotaged your friendship. Sarah's expression shifted. It wasn't pity. It wasn't forgiveness. It was understanding. She looked at Claire. I didn't know. Dr. Phil nodded. Most people don't. Mental health doesn't excuse harm. But it does help us understand it. And sometimes, that understanding is what allows us to move forward. He turned to the audience. I'm sharing this because a lot of you watching might be dealing with betrayal. And you might be wondering, how do I let go? The answer is, you don't have to let go of the truth. You don't have to pretend it didn't hurt. But you can choose to release the grip it has on your life. Sarah looked at the card in her hand, then at Claire, and finally at Dr. Phil. Thank you, she whispered. Dr. Phil smiled, a rare, genuine smile. You did this. Not me. The segment ended, but the story didn't. Backstage, after the cameras stopped, Dr. Phil sat down with Sarah in his private office. No cameras. No audience. Just 2 people talking. He asked her, Do you really forgive her? Sarah thought for a long time. I don't know yet. But I'm trying. And that's enough for now. Dr. Phil nodded. That's all anyone can ask. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. After the cameras stopped, Dr. Phil did something he rarely does. He asked Sarah to stay. Not for another segment. Not for B-roll footage. Just to talk. They sat in his private office, a small room behind the main stage that few people ever see. No producers. No cameras. Just 2 people. Do you really forgive her? Dr. Phil asked, his voice quieter than it had been on stage. Sarah looked down at the card he'd given her, turning it over in her hands. I don't know yet, she admitted. But I want to. I need to. Because carrying this hatred is destroying me. It's affecting how I parent Emma. It's affecting how I sleep, how I eat, how I think about the future. Dr. Phil leaned back in his chair. That's the thing people don't understand about forgiveness. It's not a moment. It's a process. Some days you'll wake up and think you're over it. Other days you'll be right back in that kitchen, hearing Michael's confession for the first time. And that's normal. That's human. Sarah nodded, tears welling up again. I keep thinking about what Claire said. About wanting to replace me. And I wonder, was I blind? Did I miss signs? Was I a bad friend? Dr. Phil shook his head firmly. Stop. You're doing what every victim of betrayal does. You're taking responsibility for someone else's choices. Claire's actions are hers alone. Her disorder doesn't excuse them. Her pain doesn't justify them. You are not responsible for what she did. The words hit Sarah like a wave. She needed to hear that. She needed someone to tell her it wasn't her fault. Dr. Phil stood up and walked to a small bookshelf in the corner. He pulled out a worn notebook and handed it to her. This belonged to a woman who came on my show 15 years ago. Similar situation, betrayal by a friend. She wrote in this every day for a year. At first, it was all anger. By month 6, it was confusion. By month 12, it was acceptance. She gave it to me when she didn't need it anymore. She wanted me to pass it on to someone who might. Sarah took the notebook, her hands trembling. Why me? Dr. Phil smiled. Because you're ready. Not ready to be okay, but ready to start the journey. 6 months later, Sarah sent Dr. Phil a letter. She told him that Emma was adjusting to the new normal. Claire had moved across the country and was continuing therapy. Michael had started co-parenting classes. And Sarah? She was writing in the notebook every day. Some entries were angry. Some were sad. But slowly, they were becoming hopeful. I'm not the same person I was, she wrote. And I don't want to be. That person trusted too easily. This person knows better. But she's also learning to trust again, carefully, slowly, but genuinely. Dr. Phil kept that letter in his desk drawer. He's received thousands over the years, but this one reminded him why he does what he does. Because healing isn't about grand gestures. It's about small, daily choices to keep moving forward. The envelope became a symbol. A choice we all face when hurt: hold on, or let go. And as Dr. Phil said, looking into the camera, forgiveness isn't about them. It's about you.